Good evening. It's Jamie with West Virginia Few Families United for Education with an update on Hope Scholarship. A couple of things going on over the last couple of weeks and lots of questions and a high need for correspondence back and forth. And so I just wanted to come on and try to give you an update and point you in the right direction. So, the first thing that I'll address is where we are with the lawsuit, the request for a stay, which would have allowed us to, in some way, shape, or form, picked up where we left off with the Hope Scholarship. That request was denied last week. And so the injunction is still in place, which means that currently the Hope Scholarship Program is paused because of the ruling on July 6th, that injunction put in place by Judge Tabbitt. She also ruled the program unconstitutional. And so those two things have been escalated to the Supreme Court from the intermediate court and will be considered over. I think there are arguments due from all parties involved over the month of September. And then there's a hearing date for arguments set on October the 4th. And so that's where we are with the lawsuit, which means that right now, your Hope Scholarship notice of intent, my understanding, is not a satisfactory exemption from compulsory attendance, which leads us into the next item. Counties, right? There are 55 counties in the state of West Virginia, and every county kind of has their own authority and autonomy to operate in a way that works for them, as long as it's in compliance with state code. And so there is, it's hard to put out a blanket statement or blanket guidance for families across the state, because the reality is that when you ask me a question, can I do this or can we do that, on a Facebook post, I can't actually say yes, because then someone in another county over whose children are of a different age or in a different grade or in a different scenario would read that and could think, oh, well, then it's yes for me as well. And so this is why I have been painfully thorough and a little bit difficult about how we will offer information that directs you to making a decision. So all 55 counties get to figure out how they're going to handle this. There was an update to the WEVIS, the West Virginia Education Identification System. I think that's right. And so there was an update to that system. And my understanding is that it automatically rolled over Hope Scholarship students who were enrolling into the Hope Scholarship Program. So they had submitted a notice of intent to their county or the designated school, depending on how that county managed it. They submitted a notice of intent in order to generate a WEVIS ID number in order to apply for the Hope Scholarship. And in WEVIS, they were marked as a Hope Scholar. And with this rollover, this update that happened, it had automatically enrolled students into their zoned schools. So students are showing up on rosters. We're getting communications from counties asking, is your student coming to school? We're getting questions about, should I be submitting a homeschool notice of intent? Should I be submitting a learning pod notice of intent, a micro school notice of intent? I'm sending my child to a private school. What do I need to do? Should I communicate that to the county? And again, counties are going to operate differently. However, what you may consider doing, if you've not already, fill out our form. If you don't have our form, you can email Jamie, Jamie, at WVFUE, as in Families United for Education.org, Jamie at WVFUE.org, and get on our form, fill out our form so that we can get you this information. It is just a form that we've created that you may want to use to communicate what you are doing with your Hope Scholarship student in response to the injunction for the 22-23 academic year. It is not a notice of intent. So if you are going to homeschool, learning pod, or micro school, you're going to need to submit a notice of intent to your county. If you are enrolling them in private school, then this form would allow you to communicate that to the county instead of them having to wait for a records request by the private school. Now, it may be an unnecessary step, and we're seeing that happen in some cases. However, it could prevent the county from thinking that your student is going to show up, especially in grades K through 2. So it's just, in my opinion, something that you may want to consider doing, submitting that form to the Hope Scholarship contact at your county board of education. And so if you need that form, again, you can email Jamie at wbfue.org in order to get that form. And then once you have notified the county, they can update their records to show if they should be planning for your child. We want them to know that, right? And if there's an exemption that's going to be in place, then we want them to have that on record. And so we do not believe that it was done intentionally. We don't believe that there was any ill intent behind that. However, we just want to make sure that the line of communication is open and clear so that we can diminish the chaos and the confusion that is surrounding us. Okay, so that is lawsuit update and the enrollment. So lastly, the P-EBT card. Some families are receiving these because they had submitted that notice of intent to generate a WEVIS ID number to apply for the Hope Scholarship. And because that WEVIS ID number was created when the county pulled those records to send it to the DHHR for those pandemic cards. My son got one that has benefits issued onto it. Probably shouldn't have shown that number. It's okay, because we're just destroying that card. But if they received this card, like in our circumstance, we are not, you need to understand that there were non-students and then there were students who were enrolled in public school last year in the 21-22 academic year, depending on some criteria that I'm not going to go into because it's not my business. They may have qualified, and so they may have received it because they were due those benefits. So if you've got questions about that, again, you can reach out to us or you can go on the Department of Education's website and search P-EBT and get the contact information to reach out to them. But specifically for those of us who had a kindergartner who had a WEVIS ID number generated in order to apply for the Hope Scholarship, what has happened in our case is they were non-students. So that's a different set of criteria for the non-students. And for those children who were not 6 by July 1st, were not enrolled full-time in public school, were enrolling in Hope Scholarship, for the first time, for those students, if they are in a SNAP household, a household that receives SNAP, then my understanding and talking with the child nutrition director, Amanda, from the Department of Education, is that they've met the criteria necessary. You should also be receiving a letter from the DHHR that has the activation code in order to use those benefits, because you should have received them. But if your child is not in a SNAP household, then you have received, my understanding is you've received the card in error. And it does say on the form, if you received this card by mistake, destroy the card. And so that is what we will be doing, because we should not have received that card. So if you have questions on this, Jamie at wbfue.org, happy to help walk you through it. Your email is likely to be responded to within 24 to 48 hours. Just a heads up, trying my best to keep up with the workload. So that's what we've got going on right now. The lawsuit hearing October 4th. Enrollment, we don't think it was intentional. However, it is unfortunate and something that shouldn't have happened. But in response to that, reach out so we can make sure that you're in communication with your county so that there isn't further chaos or confusion. And they have a job to do. You know, the County Board of Education is tasked with ensuring that we satisfy compulsory attendance or have an exemption from compulsory attendance. They are tasked with that. And so they have a job to do. If the child is going into public school, they need to know to be ready and prepare for that classroom. So we want to help make sure that the communication is smooth. I've already been talking with a number of superintendents or attendance directors or homeschool coordinators, depending on what the county calls them. And everyone in those departments who I have spoken with has been gracious and concerned and understanding and wanting to go above and beyond. If you've not had that experience, I would definitely like to hear about it, to ensure that you're being treated with respect and understanding, because this is an unfortunate, unintended consequence of this whole situation with the Hope Scholarship. And then, of course, lastly, P-EBT. I'm not concerned with telling you whether or not you met criteria above and beyond this whole kindergarten niche, if you will. So if your student was not enrolled, they were a non-student, then chances are if you're not a SNAP household and you received that card, it was sent by mistake and we've been asked to destroy them. But we can get you information and connect you to the right people if you have more questions. Outside of that, if you're a homeschooler doing SSAC, this is just like a little additional tidbit of information for those who follow my work. If you are a homeschooler pursuing SSAC access, we are at our deadline. And so if you are a homeschooler and you want your kid to be eligible for extracurricular athletics or activities through SSAC, then let's talk. Let's be in touch. All right, that's all that I've got. You guys have a great evening. Thanks for your grace and patience as Jessica and I work to keep up with your emails and your questions. If we can be of any further assistance, do let us know. You guys have a great evening.